Hello, cruel, cruel world. It's Jennifer, and I decided to go and figure a different way out. I've been trying to write my story of my life because for years I've been told that I've had a crazy fucking life and that the stuff that I've been through is truly unbelievable. And if I didn't live it, yeah, the stories that I've lived, I wouldn't believe them myself. And so I decided to try a different route because writing the story was too complicated. When I started writing it, because everything is twisted and turning in so many different directions and all intertwined, it was really hard to follow in written form, is what I was picking up from people. So I stopped writing and tried to figure out another option. And so then I had another a YouTube channel. Basically, I started YouTube and created a channel. And ultimately, I don't like seeing myself on camera, and decided that nobody just wants to sit and watch me tell stories. So I decided to go a different route, and am, as you can see, driving. And so welcome to Batshit Crazy Woman Driver, and decided that that would be the best way to go, is just drive and tell stories. And yeah, I feel less like I'm talking to myself, I guess you could say, when I'm in the car. And if I don't pay attention to the passenger seat, the fact that it's empty, I kind of feel like it's not as weird talking to myself. So here I am. We are on a mission today. We're going to drive to Lake Tahoe because why not? We want something beautiful to look at, and I am not that. So I'm going to start off by telling a story of me, essentially, and what's been happening in my life just recently. And I'm going to kind of start there because people don't understand me anymore. And it's not that I'm any different, it's just the way that I see things is different because of what I've been through. And when I try, shit gets complicated, so sorry if I get stumped a little bit of how to explain it. But I mean, the easiest way, I guess, is to start off by recently people have been labeling me as batshit crazy because they don't understand what is happening to me. And throughout my life, I've always been different, and I know that I've always been different, and I've never claimed to be normal. Even in high school, I referred to myself as crazy, and my friends from back in high school can even say that, yeah, I was crazy. But it's up to what you believe the definition of crazy is. And your definition of crazy isn't necessarily my definition of crazy, and your definition of quote-unquote normal isn't necessarily my definition of normal. And so when I say that I've always been different, my children can even attest to that, with the fact that throughout my life, weird shit has happened. And we didn't always know what it meant or guess if you don't believe in psychic abilities, then yeah, that makes me batshit crazy. But as far back as I can remember, I would have these visions, and the vision didn't always make sense to me, and they were just little flashes or little pictures of something, and then the next day something that had that picture in it happened. So and like I said, they didn't always make sense until they happened. They started getting more and more to where I was really showing that they were predicting the future, but like I said, I didn't always understand what they meant. They make more sense now when I see them and certain things that I see. But ultimately, when I was doing some research, I stumbled upon that, and it saw exactly what was happening to me my entire life. I just didn't realize that technically that was a definition of psychic clairvoyant. And so there we go. We have a definition of what was actually happening to me. Now, just recently, other shit has been added to that. And again, didn't know what it all meant until I stumbled across that article that was explaining the psychic, clairvoyant, and psychic abilities. And so the way I was describing things to people, everybody was seeing it as, wow, some form of psychosis. But reading that article, it was exactly the way I was describing it to people, but they weren't hearing what I was saying. So when I say that I hear voices, and then I explained it's not really accurate. I don't hear voices. It's my own. It's not even my own voice. It's my voice to myself, or somebody else described it as her inner ear. When I was first learning of what was happening to me, that was how she described it, was her inner ear or her third ear or her other voice. And it makes sense. There's a clairvoyant type, clair something, I don't remember what it's called, but that terminology that goes along with it is ultimately what was happening to me. And again, I just didn't know how to explain it. So I was telling people, no, I'm not hearing voices. I have thoughts in my head that are not my own. And that was the way I was describing it. But people were still hearing she's hearing voices and she's suffering from auditory hallucinations, is what the psychiatric community decided that was what it was called when I was locked up in West Hills. And I kept saying, no, that's not right. I'm not hearing voices. I don't hear things. They're just things that pop into my head. They're thoughts that pop into my head that are not my own. And a lot of people actually have that capability. They just don't realize that that's what it is, because they think it's their own thoughts. And originally that's what it was. And what I've always thought it was just my thoughts were racing, is how I always thought of it when I was a teenager. And they kept me up at night, just thoughts that kept coming into my head, and just over and over again. And it really was just racing thoughts is the only way to describe it. And I couldn't shut them down and didn't know how, and they kept me awake all the time as a teenager. And again, I didn't realize that was what was happening, that they were not my own thoughts. They were just thoughts of other people. Ah, crap. Crazy woman driver. Guess get to look at the ceiling for a second until I can pull over. Oh, look at that convenient spot. So anyway, the psychic clairvoyant and psychic whatever the fuck that's called, that was happening to me is, like I was saying, it was hard to explain to other people, and they weren't hearing what I said, and it didn't matter what I was saying. I was saying, no, that's not right. It's not thoughts of other, it's not my own thoughts. And the best way I was able to just finally figure out when it was happening that it's not my own thoughts was when I had a thought that someone was fat, and it was actually a thought that Justin was fat. And it really pissed me off because I don't think that about people. I've never thought people were fat. I don't use that term to describe anybody because I know how hurtful it is. I was ultimately called fat and ugly my entire life. So no, I'm not gonna ever call someone fat. It's a horrible thing to say. And so when I was thinking that Justin was fat, I knew it wasn't my thought. And then it came up that, again, other thoughts about, like, mean thoughts about people that I would just randomly see. And that's not something that I do. I don't think and judge people like that, but it was thoughts that were coming into my head of judging people. And I couldn't figure it out at first. And eventually, as it happened more and more, I realized that it was Justin's thought, and Justin was referring to himself as fat, and then it was other people that were referring to or other entities, so to speak, that I was picking up, and I was picking up their thoughts. And so when I say that they're thoughts that aren't my own, that's the easiest way to describe it. It is the spiritual people, dead people, essentially. So I was also describing it as I talk to dead people, or I hear dead people. I was going with the sixth sense type of terminology to try to describe it to people, because I just didn't know how to describe it. But it did start after Justin's death. And when Justin died, most people know that shit started happening in my house. And it's not the first time that I've had paranormal experiences, and my children can attest to that as well, especially my oldest daughter. And they all know that we've always had these paranormal type occurrences in our lives. And so it was nothing new when bowls slid out of my cabinet the day after Justin died. And I saw them slide. My daughter's boyfriend, Chris, said that he heard a sliding sound before the crash. And that's what he said at the time. I'm sure at this point in time, his story has changed because, you know, I'm batshit crazy and no one backs me up. Everybody's lying. And to try to make me think I'm crazy. But I know that I'm not. And it all comes back to what happened with the paranormal investigation type stuff that went on. And ultimately, I had other stuff happen in the house, and it led me to call in a paranormal investigation team. And when they came out, one of them, Lisa, she was using a pendulum, and it's ultimately, if you've never seen one, you can Google it. There's a lot of information about them out there. But ultimately, she was using a crystal and on a string and hanging it over a cloth that had yes, no, maybe, and other type of no questions, only I didn't know that at the time. It was explained a little bit later. Then the other person that was there, Susie, she is the one who ultimately was telling me what happens to her, and she's the one that describes it as her third ear or her inner voice, where she's able to talk to spirits. And so ultimately that's kind of how I started to learn and learn to what my abilities were, and that I wasn't alone. But when I started using the pendulum, it became more clear, and just shit got real, is the best way to describe it. So I started using the pendulum a week later, actually Friday the 13th of December, 2 days after my birthday. And I started with the yes or no questions and quickly got bored with that because I wanted more answers. That yes and no questions couldn't just do an answer. So I Googled the pendulum letter chart, and it came right up with so many options. So obviously I'm not the only one that had that idea. And I printed one out that I liked, and it had letters and numbers on it, so it seemed perfect. And continue to use that one actually today, even though I really don't need it. But I call it my sanity check, because when it comes right down to it, especially when I started hearing what was gonna be said in the pendulum, I started knowing what it was gonna say before it said it. And that started to scare me, and I didn't understand. But then when thoughts that weren't my own started really happening and becoming more and more clear, that was when I went to Susie and asked her a little bit more about what was happening to her. And we also had all kinds of crazy shit with negative entities that, of course, I wasn't warned about. But if you are in a bad mood, or if you come across a spirit that's in a bad mood, the spirit will fuck with you and tell lies or stuff that isn't necessarily logical, I guess, or just weird stuff. It's not a good feeling, and to be able to explain it. In my case, I was being told twisted things. And what I mean by twisted is I was told one thing, and when it finally happened, the psychic portion of that came true. It happened, but it was twisted another way. And so that it meant different things. And of course, a lot of different words have different meanings. So the funniest one to me was kind of in the beginning. I was told that the world is in a lot of trouble, and it truly is. And that if we continue on the same path, there's a lot of different ways that we could go. And so one of the ways was that a purge could happen. And if you've ever watched the movie The Purge, it's pretty fucking crazy. But ultimately, it's kind of true in the sense that the way that the movie plays out, that could technically happen the way the world is going right now, because the government is gaining too much control. And so all of the movies, like Hunger Games, that was another way that they suggested, or Divergent, and crap, that sun is killing my eyes and my vision. Anyway, and The Purge, all of those movies where the government has too much control could quite literally come true. And it was kind of, I was being shown back then that, look, the world is in trouble. But The Purge did come true. It was a few weeks, we'll say, later, that I was trying to move out of my apartment, and I was throwing all kinds of shit away. And I had typed a Facebook post, and after I typed it, it made me laugh when I realized what I had just typed. And I said that the purge was, I think I said something along the lines of the purge is here, and I'm purging the shit out of my house. And it was stuff of my brother's that I had been hanging on to for him, and ended up in my apartment from stuff that we had brought in to try to go through and figure out what to do with it. And by that point in time, I was pretty pissed off at my brother and didn't give a shit anymore about saving his stuff. And so I threw it away and posted it on Facebook that I was throwing it away. And recent drama that happened between my family, like I said, I really didn't give a shit, had no sentimental value to me, and obviously my brother knew I had it for years and didn't want it the last time he was here, so hey, whatever, I'm not holding on to it anymore and storing your shit. So I got rid of it. But anyway, moving on, and talking more, or still about ultimately why I'm telling my story the way that I'm telling it. And so the psychic inner voice, or third ear, or the voices in my head, or the whatever you want to call it, the doctor was calling it, or it was referred to as being schizophrenic at one point in time. It was referred to auditory hallucinations and psychosis, and there was just so many different things thrown at it, because that's what the psychiatric community is designed to do. Ultimately, they're designed to see crazy. They're trained to see crazy. So when you tell people I'm psychic, they see crazy. So the psychic clairvoyant is the vision side of it, and the other one, I don't remember what the fuck it's called. Shit. The other two, because they're just less referred to that way. So the psychic voice, ultimately, I can't remember. It starts with an E. The other two both start with E, I think. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, can't Google it while I'm driving. So that basically, it is a known thing that people do hear the spirits and their spiritual guides talking to them, and they get their psychic visions and their psychic connections different ways, and this has been known for hundreds of years. So this isn't anything new. It's just, again, new terminology to me, because I've never really done the research to figure out, oh, that's what's been happening to me since I was in high school. Good to know. And then the last one is you just know stuff, and there's no, you don't hear it, someone doesn't tell it to you. It's just, you know what you know, and you can't explain how you know it, you just know shit. And describe it is that, yeah, the three wise men came and each one of them gave me a gift. And that's the main three psychic abilities. Again, I just didn't know that was what was happening to me. So it makes perfect sense, logical sense at this point in time. And it's kind of crazy as it goes along, but it is a very long story. And that's why I decided to start telling the story while I drive, because I have nothing better to do during my day except for kill time. And decided that, like I said, I started trying to tell my story just in front of the camera and telling my story, but I didn't like seeing myself on camera, so that wasn't working for me. Writing it wasn't working for me, so this is the first video in the Crazy Woman Driver series, and decided to start with Facebook Live to get everybody to know that was what I was doing. And then I'll put the link to my YouTube channel when I finally upload this first video on it as well. But it'll be Fallen Heartbreaker at Gmail. But it's Fallen without the E, Falln, Heartbreaker at Gmail. So when it finally publishes, there you go. So at this point in time, Lucifer thinks, and walking a mile in his shoes, so to speak. But anyway, I'm going to stop there and pull over as soon as I can and start a second video so that everything's not long, but this one just for YouTube. So at this point,